Before you can automatically update an Air application, you have to download the installer file from a website. You can't run the installer directly from the web. Instead, it has to be stored locally. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to set up your installer on the website and then how to write the ActionScript code to download it and save it to the local disk. Then in later videos, I'll show you how to compare the version numbers between the currently installed version and the installer that you just downloaded, and then how to execute the update. First of all, in this chapter, unlike many of the others, you can't really step into each exercise individually. You have to go through the whole chapter one video at a time. So if you didn't go through video number 1 in this chapter, go back and run through those exercises first, so that you have two Air installers, My Air Application v1.air and My Air Application v2.air. You should have installed version 1 on your system already. Now, the next step you're going to follow is copying the version 2 Air file to a location on a website. For this purpose, I'll be using WAMP, the Windows-based application server bundle that includes Apache, MySQL, and PHP. If you're working on Mac OS X, you can use MAMP instead. Copy the Air installer for version 2 to your clipboard. Right-click on the installer, My Air Application v2.air, or Control-click with the Mac, and select Copy. Now, navigate to a folder under your web server root. I'll be using this folder, c:/wamp/www. That's the document root if you're using WAMP with its default installation. And under there, I'll go to the AirFlex folder that was installed earlier in this video series. Now, I'll paste the file into that folder. If you're working with MAMP on Mac OS X, the document root under MAMP is the applications/MAMP/htdocs folder. And you can also go to the AirFlex folder under there if you placed it there, and then copy your Air installer into that location. Now your version 2 installer is ready to download. Close whatever Windows Explorer or Finder windows you might have open, and return to FlexBuilder. And then open the application file myAirApplication.mxml. This is the version 1 application we're working in. The first step in downloading the installer from a website is to declare a few variables. First, declare a variable named URL string, data typed as a string. This will be the location of the Air installer as an absolute URL. Put in this URL, http://localhost/airflex/myAirApplicationv2.air. Next, declare a variable data typed as a URL request. I'll name it URL req, data typed as URL request, and instantiate this object using the URL request class's constructor method, and wrap it around the URL string. You now have a URL request object that points to the location of your version 2 installer. Next, declare a variable named URL stream, data typed as the URL stream class. This class is able to download binary files from a website and then save them to local data. Instantiate this object using the URL stream class's noArguments constructor method. When the URL stream class downloads the binary file, it'll be saved as a byte array. Declare a variable named fileData, data typed as a byte array, and then instantiate it using the byte array class's noArguments constructor method. So those are all the variables we need. The URL string describing the location as a string, the URL request wrapped around the URL string, the URL stream, which is going to do the downloading, and the byte array, which will receive the binary file and store it in memory. Now go to the download updater function. Add the following code to first set up an event listener for a complete event. When the download is complete, you'll get this event and be able to react. Call this code. urlstream.addEventListener, listen for the event.complete event, and then call the complete handler method when the event occurs. Now you're ready to download the file using this code. urlstream.load, and pass in the URL request object URL req. This download will happen asynchronously, and when the download is complete, the complete event will be dispatched and you will be ready to handle and save the file to disk. Place the cursor inside the complete handler function. The first task is to take the results of the URL stream class's load method and save the results to the pre-declared byte array. I'll use this code, URL stream.readBytes, and then I'll pass in the following values. First, the byte array that I want to write to, file data, then a beginning position, 0, and then the number of bytes that I want to download, URL stream.bytes available. Now I'll take the byte array and write its contents to a file. First, I'll create a file variable named f, data typed as a file, and I'll indicate where I want to write the file to. I'm going to put it on my desktop directory so I can see it easily. I'll call the desktop directory file's resolve path property and pass in the name of the file I want to create, myAirApplication v2.air. Now I'll create a file stream. I'll name it fs, data typed as a file stream object, and I'll instantiate it using the class's noArgumentsConstructor method. Next, I'll add an event listener. I'm going to be opening this file asynchronously, so I want to be able to react whenever the file has been downloaded to the desktop. So I'll call fs.addEventListener, and I'll listen for a close event. And whenever the file stream has been closed, I'll call a method named closeHandler. Now I'll open the file that I want to write to using this code, fs.openAsync. I'll pass in the file object simply named f here, and then use the constant filemode.write to indicate that I want to write to this new file. Now I'll call the file stream's writeBytes method. I'll pass in the source byte array named fileData, a beginning offset of 0, and then the number of bytes that are in the byte array using the syntax fileData.length. When the write operation is done, I'll close the file stream like this, fs.close. So that's the code you need for taking the binary content that's been downloaded using the URL stream, first reading it into a byte array, and then from there writing it to disk. Finally, go to the closeHandler method and add a bit of code to let the user know that the file has been written to disk. I'll call this method alert.show, and I'll pass in two literal strings. The air file has been saved locally, and then a title of download complete. I'll save the changes and run the application, and make sure that you're running WAMP or MAMP. In this case, I'm looking at my system tray in the lower right-hand corner and seeing that the WAMP server is ready to use. I'll make sure that it's online and ready, and you can tell from the system tray indicator by the little needle that's all the way over to the right. Then I'll go back to the application and click the Download Updater button, and after a moment I get the message that the air file has been saved locally. I'll close the application and then take a look at the desktop, and you'll see that the application installer, myAirApplication v2, has been saved successfully to the desktop. Now in the next video, I'll show you how to compare the version number in this installer to the version that's already installed, and then decide intelligently whether you want to follow through and do an update.